Kyle Draper. So, thanks for coming to the Necessary Entrepreneur.
Yes, sir.
Studio 2, 3, or 4, because we just got it happening around here now.
It's incredible.
So tell us what you really think about
incredible.
the studios, the environment. You're a person who shoots a lot of video. Give us your take.
What I love the most about what you guys have done is not only is it just a phenomenal setup with all different environments, but I love the most that the actual leader, you, are all in on it, because most of my travels, the leader's like, oh, Kyle, so glad you're here. Man, the agents need you. And then I'm like, are you doing any videos? Oh, well, I don't really need that. And so, no, I don't really do. And it's like, what are you doing? That's not leadership. Telling people what they need, but you're not willing to do it. And so that's really what I love the most about you guys, is that, you put your own money where your mouth is, and you're the first to do something before you expect any of your agents to do it.
So why is that important?
Well, because I think to truly leadership is about example. Sadly, we've kind of watered leadership down, that people that just bark orders call themselves leaders, and that's not leadership, right? A leader is someone who is out in front, sacrificing, taking bullets, experiencing the pain first before anybody else is asked to. And that's leadership. And so when I come here, I think the reason why you guys have had, well, I'm not going to say that. I can't take credit for it. I think one of the reasons why y'all have adopted video better than anyone is partially because you got me early, but then you were willing to go all in on top of it.
Yeah, but so that's the principle of life, right? So when we met 5 years ago, we came to an expo, a national real estate expo, and we went there looking for this video unlock.
Yeah.
Saw you in a session, you were up on stage in front of hundreds of people, and I instantly ran up to you and said, all right, there's our guy.
Yeah.
The things he's talking about hits with me. It sounds like that's what we need.
Yeah.
So we were looking for the vehicle, right? And we worked hard to go out and try to find it. We haven't executed it perfectly.
Yeah.
But we've just tried to execute it a little bit better every day. And having you lead, the biggest part that so many people don't do is take action.
Right.
Right? And so you've touched on that a
Well,
lot.
and that's what I like. We talked about this story last night about when I met you, right? There was probably 400 something people in the room for that breakout. And I'm being swarmed by people, but you figured out how to work your way to the front. And you didn't work your way to the front to just be like, wow, great job. That was awesome. You walked up to me, shook my hand. Hey, I'm Mark Perkins. Can we go do a video on the balcony? And 30 seconds later, we're outside doing a video. That's the action that's necessary.
Has anybody else ever done that?
Not at that magnitude of an, I've taught small classes.
Yeah.
Where somebody's like, hey, would you do a video with me before you leave? But that's not the same as what you did.
Yeah. So I guess there's something about, and I bet that video I made was not good. I bet it wasn't. If I would go back and look at it, I think we probably kept it internal. And I shared it with all of our agents, I think.
Yeah, I think we went Facebook Live.
I think we did.
In y'all's Facebook group.
Yep. And it probably wasn't good the way we know good now, but that didn't matter.
Right.
Just take action. You're going to learn something. You're going to get better. Because so many people were just outthinking ourselves on this thing.
Yep.
So the name of the podcast and this brand is The Necessary Entrepreneur. But it's the idea of taking necessary action. Does that mean anything to you? I don't want to impart my word on you, right? But about being necessary in our own lives, how we show up, the action that we take. It might be new. Maybe you've never thought about it, but
yeah,
it doesn't have to.
I love it because I think, again, when you name it something, you give people the freedom to put their own meaning to it. Mm-hmm. So I love the necessary entrepreneur because to me, it speaks to we need more entrepreneurs that aren't just looking to make another buck, but that are looking to build something that enriches the lives of people. So that's, every time I see the brand, that's my first thought.
That's what it feels like to you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's landing in the right place.
Yeah.
What are these moments? So we've all had me and you, I say all, it's us two today. We've both had successes and failures in business. And those are different levels of failure. Probably not the level of massive failure that ends it all and we go back to being an employee.
Yeah.
Right? Where I don't feel like we can affect as much change. What's a moment that stands out the most to you where your back's against the wall and how you would understand this statement, you can frame it, where Kyle Draper has been willing to do whatever it took, no matter what?
I think the most painful memory for me is that day in my car, sitting in the parking lot at a golf course going, what am I doing? Like, my inability to be uncomfortable, to take action, has caused our literal electricity to not work at our house. And to go relive that and think, because my first thought when all that happened was like, well, I better call my dad and see if he can, like, let me borrow a couple grand, because that was always my default, right? You and I had a very opposite upbringing, and I want to talk about it on the podcast, but it didn't come up, and that, like, I had to fight through a whole different thing than you, which is privilege, which is a whole different fight to try to learn humility, having come from privilege.
We'll go deep into that.
And so, you know.
So you didn't make the call to your dad?
No, I didn't. But I just, and you're going to ask me why, and I'm not even sure that I know why. I just know that for whatever reason, it just hit different. And I had this thought of, this is what you've always done. You've retreated to who you know will bail you out. And if you continue to go there, right, like you start feeding a stray dog, that dog's coming back every day. And so for whatever the reason, I just sat in my car that day going, if I don't do it different now, I might look up 10 years from now and still be looking for handouts from the people I know will give it to me. And that was the moment that I thought, I'm just being lazy. It's not that I don't have potential. It's not that I'm not good at stuff. I'm just being lazy. And I literally picked up the phone and were like, I'm going to call a bunch of these people that have expressed that they'd love to coach with me, but I've just never followed up. And by the end of the day, I had $4,000 in my bank account. And it was like just that moment of like, this isn't hard. It's uncomfortable, but this isn't hard. And that was a pivotal moment for me.
The idea of regrets.
Yeah.
Thoughts about that?
I think anybody that says they don't have any feels like they're lying. I try to do my best to not live there, but I've had times where, right, I spent almost 10 years as a pastor, and I've had moments where now as an entrepreneur, I go, like, where could I be if I would have spent those 10 years as a business person, learning about business, learning marketing, but it just doesn't, like, there's no good answer from that because it can't be undone and it can't be redone. And so I think we have, like, I think a question I need to ask myself, I don't even think I've ever asked myself this, it's just coming to my mind right now, is like, what do I think I would have learned differently than I know now if I could go back? And really dig into, are there things I think I could have learned having done it different? And there may be a couple, but the reality will be, cool, go sign up for a course. Like, if you wanted to be better at this, like, go. So I think we've got to just be careful that we don't discredit feeling that way, but that we use those feelings to ultimately allow us to move ourselves forward.
Fixed mindset or growth mindset?
It's got to be growth. I think there's a great, for anybody that is intrigued by this conversation, there's a great book by a woman named Dr. Carol Dweck that wrote, the book's just called Mindset. And that's where I was introduced to those phrases. I'm sure there's tons of other people that have talked about it in that capacity. What a miserable life to just go, oh, I'm not good at that. Oh yeah, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that. Like, what a miserable life. For that to be, there's millions of people, like, that's how they live their life. Oh man, Perkins is good at that. I'm not good at that. And so I just don't understand, like, why would you want to be okay with just not being good at stuff? And so I just love knowing that what sets me apart from other people is that I got to redo every day to be better than I was yesterday. And I love that. And it allows me to have grace and forgive myself, forgive others, because of the opportunity to grow tomorrow. And so, dude, I'm all about that growth mindset.
Being a guest on a podcast,
Yeah.
or on the stage giving a keynote.
Which do I prefer? Oh, the stage. Because I'm in control there. I don't like, because if you also said, do you prefer being a guest on a podcast or being like someone else being on your podcast? I'll take my podcast all day, because I love getting the value out of you versus everyone's now expectant that it's going to come out of me. So taking the stage where I'm in control, I can tell the stories that I want to tell, I can make the points that I want to make. It's way more comfortable than sitting across the table going, what are you setting me up for?
Goodness.
Yeah, we'll see.
Podcasting. So we're in a different studio, but we just got done with probably 2 or 3 hours of a podcast that I had a good time on.
Yeah, me too.
We dug deep.
Yeah.
My curiosity just drives all kinds of funky
Very funky
directions of conversations.
Yeah.
I read something, and it was on the internet, so it had to be true.
What? 100%.
But something, it was either 60 or 80% of the people that started podcasting in 2022
Yeah.
aren't podcasting anymore.
I think it's 200%, actually.
What's your thought about that? About a significant drop-off?
I mean, I think what it's just revealing of is just how quick we are to start something and then stop it. I don't think it is a reflection of podcasting. I think COVID made it easy for us to go, man, I'm just going to post a camera up and like, I'm just going to record a bunch of stuff in my living room, in my kitchen, right? Whatever. And so I think it's a reflection of just how quick we are to knee jerk and start something. But then because that instant validation doesn't show up, we throw it out. I think everyone should have a podcast. In theory, right? From the way that it allows you to curate content. Even if, like, what I love to teach people is you don't have to actually treat it like a podcast. You don't have to syndicate it to Spotify or Apple or whatever. But just start recording long form content like a podcast, because it's going to give you the most usable content that will allow you to have the most exposure with very limited time and effort. It's the greatest way to get yourself in front of the camera and use guests to further your message.
How do you pick guests?
That's a great question. I like to, I would say, I think I like to pick them in all different ways. I like to pick people that I think are going to suck, because I think selfishly, like, I think I'm really good at asking questions. And so I like the challenge of bringing like dry people on and getting gold out of them. I also love to just bring on people that are just achieving, that aren't looking for notoriety. Like, typically when somebody asks to be on my podcast, I don't let them on my podcast, because it doesn't feel like their motives are in the right place.
Doesn't feel genuine.
you know? And so for anybody that watches this, you want to not get on my podcast, ask me to be on it.
Well, then how do you get on it? Know somebody that knows you? Have someone that you know recommend them? That's a heck of a sales move.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Start following your content, messaging, jumping in and engaging on your content.
Yeah, I think if
Friend you in advance.
Yeah.
Be very deliberate. If you
I'm not gonna say that I would. I'm sure I have let a couple people on that have asked to be on it, but they've led with value, right? So it hasn't been like, man, I need to come on your show. I'm incredible. I'm crushing it. But it's more about, man, I'd love to help other people like understand how I'm doing this. And so to me, that's very revealing of like your heart, and that matters to me.
Do you have a hero?
Yes. I mean, my number one hero is my dad.
Why?
I think for a lot of reasons. One, you know, I have tons of friends who their dad sucked. And I think now, especially as I get older, like I just look back at just how engaged he always was and how loving he was. And, you know, I loved watching them. Like my parents have an incredible story of like losing everything in the crash in the 80s and literally being told by everyone to file bankruptcy. And my dad and my mom literally prayed about it and were like, God told us no. And so against everyone's opinion, even my grandparents, right? Pastors of a megachurch, they're like, son, start over, you're young enough, right? So to watch them and then hear stories of the resiliency that it took for them to pay back millions of dollars in debt that they didn't have to pay back because of all different reasons, but they still chose to. And then to see them become millionaires on the other side of that, it's super cool, you know, to be a part of that story. But I think the biggest part is like my dad and my mom too, but like he's never met a stranger. And so just watching, like, it's so easy to talk about how you want to be a great dad, but then actually being it was cool. And so now like something every week will happen and I'm like, whoa, man, my dad did that. And I don't think about it like that, but the longer I've got into being one, man, he's a way better dad than I am. And it's always something to strive for.
What are good traits or characteristics of a hero? Not specifically your dad, but what are they? If I would have asked that first, what is that?
I think first it starts with, does their talk match their walk? You know, there's a lot of so-called heroes out there that like they're great in front of a camera, like they're public figures. And so like the hero we see isn't really necessarily them. It's the image they want us to see. And so, you know, my dad used to always talk about how like the definition of integrity, right, is like, what do you do when nobody's watching?
Right on.
And I think getting to watch my dad when he didn't know I was watching, I think that really matters. Because we all know how to turn it on when the lights come on. Mm-hmm. We all know how to say the right things. And so, you know, I think, so another characteristic would be like, what adversity have they made it through? Because I think any hero that's never really faced opposition.
Yeah, it's like, what do you do when the chips are down?
You know?
What happens when things are going real bad? Who shows up?
Yeah.
Who shows up to be selfless?
I also think another great trait is how often are they willing to take action on something that has nothing in it for them. And, you know, there's so many, I mean, you look at our space in the real estate space, I think there's so many people that are like pimping out nonprofits and like they're doing these things really as a sales tactic and a ploy, as opposed to, or there's always a camera present, and it's like, how much do you do that's not recorded? How many conversations do you have that don't have a camera there, that you're just having because you just love serving people? And I think that's important.
So we heard earlier, I played a video clip of somebody that's in the real estate space nationally. This is a person that influences and trains other people.
Yeah.
And they actually spoke down recruiting, selling, and building to a culture of a company.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah.
Because this isn't just in the real estate space. What's your thoughts about that? And then it's going to tie in with, is culture important?
Yeah.
So
I think culture is everything. And people can disagree, and that's fine. But I think at the end of the day, if we're looking at like the why for why we're doing this, culture has to matter, because I think culture crafts the decisions that we make. Culture crafts the type of people we want to attract. And so you look at a lot of these real estate companies, because all they're trying to do is attract bodies, they're being found out for the hypocrites that they are by keeping culture on a website, or saying like, you know, we know companies that are like God first, and right, and again, it's not like don't say that, but it's, if you're gonna say that, there better be proof of that being evident in this business. And so like we just recrafted like some of our culture in the last couple months.
who's we?
And my leadership team inside of content compounding. Because when you want to recorrect someone, when you want to help someone learn, but you don't have any basis for like, what are we holding this action up against? Like, how can you get mad at somebody for not being full of integrity?
But why would someone highly successful, why would they have this opinion or say culture's BS? Like, not only don't build it and don't pay attention to it, it's BS. Are they believing something about humans?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to speak for
nobody
other
knows who it
people.
is.
No, I know.
But
I think that for most people at some point they're found out for who they really are. And I think to anyone that's able to say culture doesn't matter, you just need to recruit more, all that says to me is all you care about is the money. Like, you can't argue another perspective. Well, no, that's not. You can't argue another perspective.
But then they would probably say, well, why are we in business?
Sure.
Right? You're a for-profit business.
Sure.
Then why are you in business?
And so I think that's a great point. And so maybe the right response is, if you're a business that truly wants to move the needle in somebody's life, you better have a culture that you stand up for and that you fight for, because I don't think impact can be had without that backbone being present. That's what I think. Because if you don't, like if one of our sayings is like, we'll always do right by the client, I can't stand on stage and just preach recruiting. If I say that I'll always do right by the client, when, if I'm being honest, I would say, don't move again. Put the roots down. Dig deep. You're so close. You come over here, you're going to set yourself back 2 years, 18 months, whatever.
And have to do the same stuff you don't want to do over there.
Right. And so I can't say that. Or I also can't look at somebody in the eyes and go, you're an incredible leader, if I don't believe that. But if I don't say it, they're not coming. So at what point does and maybe it's not even just culture, but it's like, at what point do we like just adhere to a belief system instead of just give BS to people, right? Because this same guy, and again, this is true of tons of people.
Yeah.
They have entirely different messages to one piece of the industry as they do to the other. Like, I question, like, where does truth even exist in any of it when you can't even share the same message from both stages? That's effed up.
It is. But maybe they bought into an idea about their lack of faith in humans.
Sure. And I just think, and I'm not even going to say that that's not true.
Yeah.
Right? The data shows that it is true.
Yeah.
And I just think, for me, I love people too much to give up based on what the data says.
What's special about a special company? So when we recognize a company, let's not include ours. When we say something special, man, that's special.
Yeah.
They got something special over there. What is that?
Oh. I guess it could be, right? It's kind of along the same factor of like that person's got it. Like, they got it. What's it? I think it can be the way they leave people feeling, right? Like, there's people that'll come up to me after a talk, and again, the talk is about social media. They're there to be better at marketing, but they'll come to me in tears going, "This is incredible. Like, you spoke to me in a way that I've never been talked to before." What does that mean? I don't know what that, I mean, I wish I could bottle that up and always be that. But I think, to me, like, special is a group of people moving in the same direction, seeking to fight for the betterment of others before themselves. And I think that's really where special comes in.
And feeling that that's the case.
You know?
Like, that's special.
Yeah, I think so. But you could also look at somebody that, like, we could look at a startup that goes from like $500,000 in revenue to $50 million in 10 years or 5 years, and we're like, man, that's special. And so it's not like, I think special could take on different meanings, sometimes negative ones.
Maybe it's just unique.
Yeah.
Maybe when we say it's special, that's different. That's different than the norm. That's unique. Branding versus marketing.
Branding for me should be about when a stranger doesn't know you and they look you up, what opinion do they have? To me, that's branding, right? We say the word Nike. Whatever you think, that's branding. Marketing is a slightly different approach, and I'll be the first to say I feel like I kind of suck at the marketing side, because the marketing is kind of the clever way to convince someone to be bought into you without them feeling like you're begging them, right? Like, that's kind of how, like, I would look at it. I think branding is very easy, and it can be as simple as just, you don't ask for business. You just put yourself out there. You let people get to know you as a human, right? You identify some of the uniqueness about yourself. That's branding. But most realtors, or I think most salespeople, what they do, they would call branding and they would call marketing. And all they're doing is just thirst trapping people.
Yep, they're thirsty.
And
nobody wants that.
It's ugly.
Yeah, nobody wants that. To not frame this as a work-life balance, because so many people, that's a leading question. But where should a professional career and the rest of your life, which we call personal life, how do those go together? What have you found the best way for those to go together?
Well, so I think this is different. If we're talking about like, what would your answer be for single people? What would your answer be for parents? What would your answer be for people that are married? So I think we have to, at least for me, I have to look at what are my goals from a business perspective and what are my goals from a personal perspective, and then where is there alignment in both, and where do I need to move one based on what I think about the other. And so for like me personally, I travel a lot. I do this because my wife has already checked off on it and is okay with it. If she would have told me 3 years ago, I don't want you gone. I need you here. I don't care if that's the way the business grows. I wouldn't be in Cincinnati right now.
Yeah.
Right? Because that matters most.
You wouldn't even become the person, though,
right,
that earned Cincinnati.
I would have just had to figure out, like, we just need to use Facebook ads, and I just need to do video content, right? And again, right?
So
it's not that that's the right answer.
Yeah. So here's a question then. What level of honesty do we need to have with ourselves around this is all I'm willing to put in?
Yeah.
So I got to find a way to make this work, or this is what's going to be required to earn that, so you better do it.
Yeah. I think we've got to be brutally honest. And I think some of it is going to require testing, right? Like, you look at you and I can't make sacrifices that you've made based on the life I've chose to live, right? We got a third kid on the way. I can't be at the office till 2 a.m. every day. Not if my original goal was to raise an incredible family. But then, right, if I allow the pendulum to go all the way over there, and then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, we don't have any money in the bank.
Honey, electric's off.
Right. So we've had, and this happens in our household, there's been plenty of times where I've had 100% support from Lana. Have a great trip. So proud of you. You're amazing. Thank you for what you do for our family. And then I've had other times where she's a little bit more frustrated that I'm leaving. And we have to have a real conversation about, hey, I know you don't want me to be gone, but I have to do this. Like, our family is depending on this. And thank God, like, she's always in agreement. I know, I just hate it. I'm sorry. Right? And some of that's going to be coming in the next few months. Right? In May, Draper baby number 3 is here. And so I've already said, honey, I'm not traveling the entire month of June. I'm home the entire month of June. And as of today, that's enough. But the end of June gets here, she could be upset if on July 3rd, I'm heading out to speak somewhere and she's now got a 4-month-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old.
It won't be on July 3rd. It might be July 5th.
So I think it just always requires, like, I think too many people, especially in like relationship, I think it's so easy if we're not careful to be like, we already talked about this. And that's it. And I think that's why a lot of relationships end very rough. And instead, I try to always just be aware of, like, the last time we came into agreement on this, she didn't have a baby in her belly. Like, she didn't have these hormones and all these things like running through her body. And so where is grace to always be reconsidering and negotiating as opposed to just, that's how it is. And dude, it's hard. It's super hard. And I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think there's a right answer.
But you better be brutally honest, is what we said.
100%. And to even go like deeper into like my life, my wife signed up to marry a pastor. Like, she grew up wanting to be a pastor's wife. So you talk about like a trust that she has to have in me. Like, she's not entrepreneurial minded. Shoot, I wasn't entrepreneurial minded until I was 30 years old. And so, like, she's now having to live a life that she never agreed to. But because she loves me, she's been willing to do it. And I think for anybody that watches this, like, we need to give our spouses more grace, because most of them didn't sign up for this. They're okay with it, but they didn't sign up for it. And so I don't think it's fair for her to say, I can't do something, but I also don't think it's fair for me to say, I'm doing this no matter what. You know? So
goes the process of life, right?
Yeah, man.
This unique experience. So what does Kyle Draper know the path to success in business is?
I don't think I figured it out yet. I'm working on it. But I think what I'm learning the most right now is I can't ask things of my team that I'm not willing to do. And what I mean by that, like we already talked about at the very beginning, right? Like, I love that you're actually doing video, and like, I'm not a great like systems and processes guy. So I'm very quick to just pawn it off on other people. And I think it's crappy leadership. And so I think what I'm learning is just showing the people around me that, like, I'm willing to come alongside you and put in the work too. So that when you're stressed, like, we can talk about it, and you're not like, well, he hates it, so I don't want to say anything to him. And now you build resentment towards me when I didn't mean for that to happen. But right, like, think about how many brokers, right? Like, their people can't come up to them and be like, hey, I'm struggling with video. Like, what should I do? Because they already know their stance, and it's not a good one. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to be real aware of the mirror that I look in every day, and just be honest with, like, what are the issues that I still have that are holding me back from my next level. And I don't just think the answer is, okay, cool, go hire somebody that does it, and have zero unwillingness to just have at least a basic understanding. And so, like, my life sucks right now from a business perspective, because I'm forcing myself to dig into things that I freaking hate.
So that's the path forward in success in business. Dig into the things you hate.
To some degree, right? I mean, because you gotta
surround yourself with people who are highly skilled in those areas too.
Yeah, because I also am fully in agreement with the people that are like, man, like, focus on your strengths and hire out your weakness.
Yeah.
100%. I agree with that.
But if you're the leader, right?
100%. Yeah.
All right, good way to wrap this up is, what do you want the overarching theme of when this thing's all over for us? This physical thing on this earth is all over. What do you want to be the theme of the eulogy?
Man, I just want people to say that, like, my life was better because Kyle and I crossed paths at some point. Like, that's all I want. You know? Like I'd love for people to share at my funeral, like, I didn't really know him, but man, like, when I'd catch his video or something, like, it just encouraged me, you know? Like, that's one thing I want. The second thing I want is for the people closest to me to be able to have genuinely good things to say about me. Because I think sometimes we can get so focused on wanting the accolades of others that we mistreat the ones closest to us to go serve the ones that don't even matter. And I know too many people that I'm like, man, your dad's cool. And he's like, dude, my dad's a dick. I'm like, what? Really? He's always been cool to me. And I hate that, you know? So, like, I want the people that I spent the most time with to go, man, like, the Kyle you think he was. That's all I want.
Awesome, man. Thank you.